The Future of Money, Governance, and the Law is hosted by the Government Blockchain Association, a worldwide community to connect, communicate, and collaborate. This show is produced by Podtex. To learn more and how to host your own show, go to www.podtex.com. Podtechs. Podtex, your partners in podcasting.
Hi, this is Gerard Daché. I'm the Executive Director of the Government Blockchain Association, and welcome to our podcast. Today, we've got the great pleasure of having Lourdes Miranda with us today. And Lourdes is a member of the GBA. Lourdes, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Tell them a little bit about your background and like that.
Good afternoon, Gerard. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm quite honored to be interviewed. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm a cryptocurrency analyst, a financial crimes investigator, a certified anti-money laundering specialist, and a certified fraud examiner with over 20 years of government and corporate experience. I specialize in counter-threat finance that includes money laundering and fraud investigations, counterterrorism, cryptocurrency executions and blockchain analysis, financial intelligence collection analysis, and risk management, just to name a few. I was a former federal employee for a few years as a senior intelligence analyst and a criminal investigator before transitioning into consulting. I've consulted for multiple U.S. government agencies, such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as well as for the private sector. I'm also a frequent speaker at conferences and a guest lecturer and professional reader at local universities. I've also co-authored and have been quoted in multiple articles on cryptocurrency investigations and the blockchain. I am currently with InfraShield. InfraShield is a veteran-owned cyber-physical security company which specializes in solutions, products, and strategies to secure agencies and companies against cyber attacks. I'm assigned to InfraShield's Financial Crime and Service Division.
Wow. Well, I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping we'd have somebody that might have some credentials in this space, but I guess we'll just have to do. You forgot the part about taking long walks on the beach and being a yoga instructor.
Absolutely, yes.
Wow. Well, I was impressed before, but now that I hear sort of the full suite of credentials, I'm just so grateful that you're on this podcast, because I think folks are going to learn a lot. So tell us your story, right? Tell us a little bit about how did you get into this whole crazy blockchain thing?
Interesting story. About 3 years ago, I was assigned to support a cyber team that required my assistance with identifying money laundering and terrorist financing methodologies in the cyber world. I assisted them with understanding the Bank Secrecy Act and USA Patriot Act protocols, meaning how to comply with anti-money laundering and the countering of the financing of terrorism protocols when conducting online transactions using cryptocurrencies without violating the Bank Secrecy Act and the Patriot Act. At the time, I've been following cryptocurrency and the blockchain, but I never executed a transaction or even understood what blockchain was. So we made an excellent team. We had an agreement that if they taught me how to execute cryptocurrencies and analyze the blockchain using specific tools and methods, in return, I trained them on money laundering, terrorist financing risks using cryptocurrency and the blockchain, and particularly how bad actors can circumvent protocols to avoid detection.
Okay, look, I'm going to pause you for a second, because you must have some great stories, right? And I told you before, I gave you an outline of the kinds of stuff we would talk about, but I'm going to throw you a couple of curveballs, right?
Sure.
So, and by the way, there's a tornado outside my window right now. So if this is a good podcasting software, you won't hear it. But if a tree falls on my house, you'll know.
Will do, Gerard. I'll call 911.
Yeah, thanks. No, just call somebody to investigate my crypto. That's all. But listen, you must know of some pretty crazy stories in your years of dealing with this. Are there some stupid criminal stories, or some really, really tough or interesting cases that you worked on? What are some of the out of the ordinary kind of cases that you worked on?
Outside cryptocurrency?
In or out?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the cases and work that I've been assigned to are classified, so I can't share too much. But it is a very interesting field. I can't, off the top of my head, I cannot share. I don't have any ideas of unclassified cases that I can discuss with you.
All right. Well, I'll try to weasel it out of you between now and the end of the program, but that's okay. All right. So,
yes.
so you had this background in this area, and then somewhere along the way, you stumbled across the GBA. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. I missed your question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So,
could you repeat your question?
Okay. Sure. So, so you had this background in the investigations and stuff like that, and somewhere along the way you stumbled across GBA. Tell us a little bit about how you found out about GBA and what motivated you to become a part of it and like that.
Definitely. I found GBA through LinkedIn, and I joined because I was interested in GBA's financial regulatory working group. And your working group has a financial crimes component that focuses on working with law enforcement and government agencies with investigating money laundering, fraud, and terrorist financing using cryptocurrencies and the blockchain. And that was the number one reason why I joined GBA. And I like the fact that this group also shares their expertise in forensic analysis, intelligence collection to assist with building criminal cases, to drive collections, fuse intelligence gaps, and generate investigative leads. So that's the reason why I joined GBA.
Excellent. And now I think that when you joined, maybe Mike Bombas might have been leading that group. I think Andrew Bloom is leading that group. Have you had a chance to interact with them a lot? I know you've been busier than all get out recently.
I travel a lot, so I haven't interacted with them yet, but I am looking forward to interacting with them. I'm looking forward to meeting them at next month's symposium. So that'll be an opportunity for us to get to know each other.
Yeah.
And share some ideas.
That's right. I think that when you joined, what's his name? The guy from Blockchain Intelligence Group, Robert Whitaker, I think was leading it. Yeah, and they're a great organization. They probably do a lot of the same stuff you do. Your company does.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
So that's the number one reason why I joined, because of your working groups.
We've got some amazing people in these groups. It's humbling for me to even think about that. So what do you think, how do you think blockchain impacts your industry, right? What's the positive, the negative, right? The good, the bad, the ugly?
Well, first, with U.S. law enforcement, also the intelligence communities that I work with, a lot of it is new to them. And it's very time consuming to train and just keep up with the latest trends and emerging technologies. From a positive perspective, we support InfraShield, support U.S. law enforcement with building cases against bad actors using cryptocurrency and the blockchain to operate nefarious activities. The blockchain retains the integrity of the digital evidence for the chain of custody because the record on the blockchain can't be altered. As of today. I mean, that can change tomorrow, next week, next year. And the blockchain increases the transparency for evidence that must be retained in an audit trail when we build any strong case. So when a transaction is executed, the blockchain leaves behind significant pieces of evidence that we can use. And recordings of transactions, date and timestamp of those transactions, and proof of those transactions, the sender, receiver of those funds. So all the hash numbers that are populated on the blockchain retains the integrity of the digital evidence that's required for the chain of custody and building a strong criminal case. And again, the hash number contains the public key, the unique public key of both sender and receiver, the date, the data, and the timestamp. So definitely the hash numbers are significant because it contains subscriber information that we need about the sender and the receiver, which again, that we can ensure the chain of custody because it's irreversible. So that's the primary positive perspective from us.
So what do you think the barriers are, right? Or the challenges in implementing a blockchain solution in a for chain of custody?
Well, the number one challenge that we have with building the chain of custody is the blockchain is pseudonymous in nature without third-party intelligence. We need that to build a case. Now, third-party intelligence, if anyone is not familiar with that term, can be from like law enforcement informants, confidential sources, intelligence sources. We need cooperation from exchanges or exchangers, whoever you ask, or wallet services to provide some subscriber information for us so we can follow that transaction on the blockchain. Electronic interception to collect the identification of individuals behind these transactions is also a challenge. So we use blockchain intelligence tools that are issued by like CipherTrace, Chainalysis, just to name a few, to help us identify third-party intelligence to build a case. So I apologize if that sounded confusing, but we basically need human intelligence to help us with blockchain analysis. We still need human intelligence.
So is most of the work you're doing on sort of the main chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum? Do you deal with any blockchains outside of sort of the standard chains?
We're working on Monero, which is another challenge. So I'm working with mathematicians to help me analyze algorithms that I look at it and it's like Greek to me. So we work with mathematicians and software engineers to help us with Monero, because that's another challenge.
All right, so you're going to have to explain to some of the audience. You want to explain what a privacy coin is, maybe, because you did a great job of explaining how Bitcoin creates this sort of trail of evidence and how you need third-party intelligence. Tell them a little bit about what privacy coins are and Monero and maybe the different types and how and why they're different than, say, a Bitcoin.
Monero has established its own blockchain, and Monero public key doesn't start with a 1 or 3 or a BC like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin does. Monero is its own cryptosphere, and it has algorithms that is even more complicated than Bitcoin. So I hope I explained that. So unfortunately, bad actors have honed in on that. They realized that U.S. law enforcement and international liaison and our partners have the tools to analyze blockchain. And they realized, and I don't know how they realized this, but they realized by adopting...
When you say blockchain, though, I think you mean Bitcoin.
Bitcoin,
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when they realized that, U.S. law enforcement and our international partners are on top of it, and we have tools now to help us collect intelligence and analyze it, they've adopted Monero. And to this day, I don't know how bad actors are realizing that. I think they read open source reporting more than we do, because unfortunately, U.S. law enforcement reports everything in the news. And clearly they're following that. They're like, you know what? We need to stop using Bitcoin. We need to start focusing on Monero.
Yeah.
So my Monero wallet has more privacy protocols than other wallets out there.
So you have Monero. So who are you trying to evade? Just kidding.
I'm like, is that a trick question? What? I'm not disclosing classified information. So I apologize for going around your question, because I'm afraid that I may say something that's classified.
No, that's quite all right. I have a long time ago, back when George Washington was the commander-in-chief, I was actually in Army intelligence, so I respect and appreciate what you said.
But we still need human intelligence and
Absolutely.
signals intelligence.
So my understanding about Monero is that one of the things that makes it really difficult to track is that with a Bitcoin transaction, you can see the input and the output of a one-to-one transaction. So one address sent 10 Bitcoins to one address.
Yes.
But that with Monero, you have a suite of inputs, right? A whole number of inputs, and then you have this black box, and you have a suite of outputs, and there's no way to tell which input is connected to which output.
I agree.
So
correct.
Once those transactions go through a couple addresses, it's just impossible to be able to. Oops, it's just impossible. You did it. I didn't. It's impossible to be able to track that transaction. Which now, and I'm not going to ask you anything more in terms of the tools that law enforcement use, but clearly that's an area where law enforcement has got to be really concerned. and given the number of new privacy coins that are coming into play, and I don't want to mention them specifically, but the tree just fell on my neighbor's house. That's what that is.
Are you in D.C.? Are you in Washington, D.C.?
I am.
In the city?
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm in Fairfax, right outside of Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So,
go ahead.
So, so clearly being able to track transactions and having this outside connection. So let's talk a little bit about right now when people want to buy cryptocurrency, most people are dealing with an exchange, right? But as we move more to a peer-to-peer model, right? So when more people realize that, okay, well, my wallet can talk directly to your wallet, I don't have to go through a third party. How does that impact being able for law enforcement to do their job?
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the major threats internationally and nationally are Bitcoin ATMs. You can deposit cash into a BTM anywhere and move it with a wallet, with the Electrum wallet. The Electrum wallet is one of the most popular because it's fast, free, and easy. So BTMs is a big threat, major threat. And unfortunately, a lot of BTMs in the U.S. and outside the U.S. don't require identification when you're making deposits. It just requires a QR code, and you can actually use a burn phone. You don't have to use a legitimate cell phone, a burn phone, to move transactions.
Wow.
And that's a challenge law enforcement and our international partners have, especially the BTMs overseas, because a lot of BTM overseas, according to my sources, I'll leave it at that, the BTMs aren't monitored. There aren't cameras. No one's controlling it. It's not regulated. It's fair game overseas.
Right.
So if you want to move money into the U.S. from overseas, I would do it through a Bitcoin ATM machine. That's what I would do.
Wow. And then we also have the situation where we have these new types of exchanges, these decentralized exchanges, right? How does that play into the whole mix?
Are you talking about U.S. or international?
Well, the thing about a decentralized exchange is, I guess it could be both, right?
Correct. Yes. I'm more worried about the international exchanges more than the U.S. exchanges, because international exchanges, a lot of countries are not regulated. They don't regulate any financial transactions. A lot of their financial institutions are corrupt. They have no regulations. They're not centralized, and it's pretty scary, especially in countries where they have a corresponding banking relationships with the United States. I'm not going to pick on Europe, but there's a lot of, I'm not going to identify any particular country, but there's a lot of countries in Europe that have banks in their countries that have a U.S. corresponding banking relationship with the United States. And all you need is a corrupt banking official in that bank. And so they can help you move money from their bank into a U.S. bank in that country and eventually into the United States. And you can use it with a BTM machine, and then find an exchange that will convert your cryptocurrency into a fiat currency and then move that fiat currency into that bank account. And then it's fair game. Once cryptocurrency is converted into fiat currency, it's fair game. We as law enforcement lose the game.
Wait, you said once cryptocurrency is converted into fiat currency?
It's fair game, yes.
Right.
Because if I were in a European country and I finally found an exchange that will convert my cryptocurrency into a fiat currency, I can just transfer that fiat currency into my bank account in that country.
Right.
That has a U.S. corresponding bank relationship with U.S. banks, and then transfer my money from that country into a U.S. bank in the United States and just fly here and withdraw my money.
Right.
So exchanges that have fiat conversion capabilities is another threat. Those have to be monitored. Those have to be regulated first, because once crypto is converted into fiat currencies, the game is over. Because then it's hard for us law enforcement and our international partners to prove that this fiat currency came from a crypto exchange.
Right. But even if it was in Monero or Zcash, it still is problematic for law enforcement, right?
Correct. Because there's a lot of exchanges that I call shifters that will convert from whatever, a fiat currency, any other current crypto, into Monero.
Do you have any insight that you can share relative to how foreign actors are using this technology to evade sanctions?
Yes, they're using Bitcoin ATMs. Absolutely. They're using Bitcoin ATMs. Bitcoin ATMs overseas, you can find them in subway stations, universities, the mall, airports especially. Yes. And
So,
that's what they do. They, rather than dealing with an exchange or run the risk of someone requesting their personally identifiable information, they might as well just walk into a BTM, deposit cash, and then move their money through BTM and circumventing the exchanges.
So recently there was a hack. I think there was one in Baltimore and one of the cities in southern Florida, right, where the hackers basically locked up the city's computers and they demanded payment in Bitcoin. I think it was a 60,000 or 600,000 or something, and the municipalities paid it. And so when that happened, that money is now sitting in a Bitcoin address somewhere, right?
Correct.
And so, are you saying that, and the good guys can see the money sitting in that address, and if that money moves, right, they can see it through, I'm guessing, some kind of block explorers or something like that, right?
Or other blockchain tools like CipherTrace Chainalysis.
Right. But
yes.
if somebody walks into a BTM, right, and
Correct.
pulls money out of that address, poof, right?
Correct. Because
Wow.
you're using cash.
Right.
Cash, yeah.
Or
that's what I would do if I was a bad actor. I would go overseas with my cash, deposit in all the BTMs that I could find, because a lot of BTMs don't require identification. They don't require proof of the source of your funds.
Okay, so let's talk about for a minute if a government regulator or a policymaker is listening to this broadcast. On one hand, there is this thought of, well, let's just outlaw everything and let's just make it all illegal, right? And then the other thought is, well, we're completely killing innovation and we're making it horrible for all the good actors to innovate, and we're driving all of that innovation offshore. Do you have any thoughts in terms of how government leaders, balance those two, that oxymoron?
I say, if I was a senior policymaker overseas or in the United States, regulate, centralize those BTMs, because who needs an exchange when you have a BTM? Those BTMs need to be monitored. They need to be licensed and operated by someone who is certified to identify money laundering activity.
Can't I be a BTM?
In the United States, you will be considered a money service business, so you have to apply for a license with FinCEN, and that can take a while. Yeah, you can do it, but in the United States, it's there are more restrictions.
No, but here's what I mean. Because I've had friends say to me, well, gosh, I'm interested in getting some Bitcoin. How can I get them? And I've said to them, well, if you want, give me $100 and I'll send you $100 worth of Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
I essentially just became an MSB, right? Money services business.
Not if you don't own the machine. But if you're owner and operator of a BTM, you have to be licensed.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if I have a wallet on my phone,
okay,
right, they give me $100 in cash and I put it in my pocket, right, or I go deposit it in my bank account and I send them $100 worth of Bitcoin from my phone, right? Anybody could essentially function as a BTM. I mean, I'm not talking about the machine. I'm talking about the activity.
No, because you're talking like PayPal. I can send you money from my PayPal account to your PayPal account. That doesn't. I'm not considered a money service business. That's a peer-to-peer transaction.
Right.
If I wanted to own and operate my own machine and have people come into my home and my BTM is in my living room, then that'd be considered a money service business because I'm the owner and operator of that machine.
Right. But just like we have a cash society today, right? So, like for example, you could pay me $100 in cash for something. I could take that $100 and pay somebody else with it. When enough people essentially have wallets, have these essentially crypto cash wallets, then we wouldn't even really need BTM machines.
You're right. It eventually, well, let's see. No, because you need to deposit cash somewhere to move. You need to deposit cash somewhere to have it converted into crypto to finally move it from wallet to wallet.
I guess
so BTMs are still.
I guess the real problem is that when I can pay for my Starbucks coffee, my groceries, my heat bill, and my mortgage through some kind of crypto, that's when I think when I don't have to convert it into fiat and I don't have to interact with a regular bank, that's when the curve gets really, really steep for law enforcement.
Yes, it can. Correct. Because law enforcement requires certain tools to collect the transactions and to analyze and to be able to analyze it and be able to take it to establish a case, to build a case.
Right. Because if we don't have access to the banks and the financial institutions, those currently are very important tools for law enforcement.
Very true. Very true, because we still need that human intelligence.
So what do we do?
Well, I can tell you BTMs will eventually replace wire transfers because wire transfers are expensive, pop to pop money, that can get expensive.
Yeah.
So, MoneyGram and Western Union, I would be worried if I was the owner of Western Union and MoneyGram because eventually, BTMs and wallets are going to replace wire transfers, the traditional wire transfers that we're used to, like Western Union and MoneyGram.
So, were you following the Facebook Libra Calibra hearings, and are you sort of monitoring that was going on there?
I am, yes.
So, tell me what you think about the whole thing from a law enforcement perspective, law enforcement intelligence.
I think it's great because Facebook would cooperate with law enforcement.
I thought it was interesting.
Cooperation.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they said that their motivation was to bank the unbanked, right? And the reason so many people are unbanked is because they don't have proper identity. And then they said they would be fully compliant with AML KYC. And I wasn't really sure how those two things line up with each other.
If Facebook wants to be successful, they will comply. They will comply.
And they also said things like, well, that would really be up to the wallet. For the wallets to comply with a lot of that stuff. So I thought they were being a little, elusive. And I got the sense that for a lot of the questions that they were asked, they hadn't really thought it through. And
I'm confident they'll think it through. I'm confident they'll be in compliance.
Do you think that they'll launch relatively soon, or do you think that they're going to hit roadblocks that they hadn't anticipated?
I'm confident they'll hit roadblocks. I see it launching in 2020.
2020. Okay.
Yeah. And since this is a global threat, from a law enforcement perspective, another negative perspective is since this is a global threat, jurisdictional and collaboration efforts can be challenging because with law enforcement, you've heard of the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, the MLAT. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's challenging due to the MLAT and subpoena coordination. For those who don't know what MLAT is, it's an agreement between two or more countries for the purpose of gathering and exchanging information. So MLATs and subpoenas require knowledge of the location of exchanges, wallet services that bad actors are using. So that's another challenge is the MLAT and subpoena agreement. Yeah, because this is a global threat. I mean, where do you start? Jurisdictions and regulations are different in other countries. There are privacy issues. So that's another challenge law enforcement has.
Yeah, there are countries around the world that recognize that the U.S. banking system essentially holds other countries, requires them to comply with our sanctions regime and to maintain U.S. dollars in reserve. And so if we then print more money, right? If we essentially increase our money supply and we devalue the dollar as an asset, then we're negatively impacting the rest of the world, right? And so some people refer to that as the U.S. exporting our debt to other countries. So I do know that a lot of other countries are looking for alternative mechanisms so as not to have to price and rely on the dollar because either A, they don't agree with our sanctions requirements and they may want to do business with Iran or some other country, or B, they don't, they're political reasons. And I can just imagine them looking towards all kinds of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies to circumvent those restrictions that we place on them.
I agree. Look at North Korea, China, Iran. They don't need us. They can mine their own coin.
Right. Well, I thought I had read something.
BTMs.
I thought I'd read something recently that that Iran had confiscated a bunch of Bitcoin miners and essentially was mining because of they're trying to raise capital in light of the U.S. sanctions.
I'm not surprised. I believe it because Russia is mining their own coin. They don't need us.
And are they mining a Bitcoin or something like that, or are they mining some kind of altcoin?
According to open source reporting, they're mining altcoins.
Wow.
They're mining altcoins. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's another threat. Being able to mine your own coin.
Yeah. Right. Because we've got now what, depending on what exchange you go to, there's over 2,000 different coins. And we have no idea what this is going to mean from an economic perspective, right? Because we know how economics work when we have a limited number of dollars and the Fed controls monetary policy. Correct. But now we start throwing in all of these other coins, and this isn't a law enforcement thing, but there's a lot of threats to governments and financial systems that we need to figure it out.
I agree. Our U.S. financial institutions are being threatened because Russia can, like you said, Russia, China, Ukraine, Iran can circumvent U.S. sanctions, U.S. and UN sanctions by mining their own coin, establishing their own exchanges, establishing their own wallet services, and then eventually converting their coin into another altcoin, and then altcoin to a fiat currency, and move that fiat currency in disguise, of a pound or a Canadian dollar, and then move it into the U.S. And it'll be difficult for us to find out where did the source of funds come from. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's so let me ask you this question: if you were, because we'll have folks at our event September 14th and 15th in these categories. If you were in the banking or financial services industry, right, and you read all this stuff about Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrencies, but you hadn't done anything yet, what are some of the first steps that you would encourage people that are working for banks, especially some of the smaller banks, to try to get their head around all this?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I talked to a small bank in the United States. I won't name the state. Small bank, small town in the Midwest. And I said to him, you need to understand the global threat of bad actors using cryptocurrencies and the blockchain, to finance operations. Until you understand the threat, you won't be able to combat it because they don't think it's their problem. Because they don't exchange in crypto. I'm like, no, it is your problem because once crypto is converted to fiat currency and it comes through your bank, and then when we do an investigation and find out the source of funds went through your bank, then it becomes your problem. So I say, understand the global threat, understand cryptocurrency and the blockchain, embrace it because it's not going away. It's the future of alternative payment methods, and it's not going away. So,
one of the things that I'm going to I'm trying to recruit you to do this in front of everybody is
Sure.
we have a part of our education program, the GBA Blockchain Certification course. We've got a financial specialist course. So if you go to GBA Global.org and you go under, I think it's Blockchain Certifications, there's a specialist course called the Financial Specialist course. And there's also a legal one. But I'm hoping that you will work with us and become a certified instructor in that space, because having somebody like you teach that class and being able to issue GBA certifications would be just awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm honored. Absolutely. You let me know when. I'll fit into my schedule.
All right. Well, we'll talk sometime outside the podcast, and we'll get that all squared away. It's a phenomenal course, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is in the course, and then people can have not only have a knowledge and understanding, but then they can have a credential, so that they have some credibility when they're talking to people.
Absolutely. And I can teach them the difference between financial intelligence versus financial investigations, because the mission can be different depending on the type of agency, how they investigate cases, how they build cases, how they collect intelligence, how they collect evidence. I can do all that. I'd be honored to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Another thing I recommend is to reach out to professional resources like myself and other people in the crypto world. I was talking to this banker. I said, you need to learn and understand this.
So how can they reach you if they want to reach you? I know one way they can reach you, if they go to gbaglobal.org and go to members, individuals, type in your name. We'll put your contact information in the show notes as well. We'll place your website. Yep. And so let's touch base afterwards. You can let me know what information you'd like posted. But if somebody's listening, I can get a hold of you through LinkedIn, or what are some other ways I can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. They'll see me at next month's Symposium, and they can also reach me through LinkedIn, or my email. I can provide it to you now, or they can look at or find my email on your website, or they can even call me.
Why don't you do it verbally, and then we'll also put it in the show notes.
Sure. My email is lmiranda@infrashield.com.
Perfect. Okay. Now you mentioned this symposium a little bit. Why don't you tell the audience just a little bit about the symposium from your perspective?
This symposium is, from what I'm going to get out of it and what I can bring to it, is meeting bankers, law enforcement, financial crimes investigators, intel analysts, regulators, compliance officers, and we can share information, establish and strengthen our relationships, and just keep in touch and share our experiences and our ideas on combating financial crime. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We're going to have Kyle, I hope I say his name right, Hoppinger. He's going to be there from the U.S. Senate Banking Committee. We're going to have folks there from the U.S. House of Representatives. We'll have financial folks there from Switzerland, from Singapore, from U.S. banks. We'll have somebody there from CFTC.
Very nice.
Yeah, just a whole bunch of FBI, some state police, some local police. It's going to be an awesome.
And thank you for having it on the weekend. That helps. We're busy Monday through Friday, and I'm like, oh, how perfect is this? It's on a weekend, so this is perfect.
Yeah, September 14th and 15th. So if you want information about this, go to the GBAglobal.org, go to the events tab, view all events, or you can click on Money, Governance, and the Law. And then this is part of a series. So this podcast is part of a series. We're also going to be collecting all the output from this event, and we're going to put together an annual report called the Government Blockchain Association's annual report on the future of money, governance, and the law. And we're doing events like this all over the world, in India, in the UK, in Asia. We'll be doing this all over the world. And so that when we put these reports together, it'll be a global perspective from all the 50 different working groups, from our chapters in 100 cities around the world, and from the conference attendees that are physical and virtual. And then we're going to shop this report to major news medias and see if we can get a program on a Fox or MSNBC or CNN or some of the financial stations to put together like a documentary every year to let people know what's happening in this space and how it will impact their lives.
Absolutely. And again, I like the fact that you have a diverse background of people coming in, not just law enforcement.
Yeah.
Because we're all in this together.
I have to tell you, when we started GBA, right, the first couple of people that would show up were a little weird, right? You've probably met some of them, right? And they were anarchists, and we were trying to establish ourselves as credibility as a government blockchain association. And one of our first meetings, right, there was like 5 or 6 people that showed up. Right, today there's over 15,000. Right, but our first meeting, we had like one of our first meetings, and this guy walks up to me. And he says, "Hi, my name is such and such. I'm with Anonymous." And he hands me his business card. And I'm looking at the business card, and there's the Anonymous logo, and his name, and his address, his email, his phone number. And I just looked at it. I was like, I don't think you know how this works.
He's anonymous with all that information.
Yeah. So, but it's been great to see over the last couple of years how this field has really professionalized, and how there's good actors that want to play by the rules, and really try to understand this thing and use the benefits. But the bottom line is, this technology is changing things, right? And we have to figure it out. We can't fight it.
No. I
that's
mentioned I was training a bunch of law enforcement people. I was at an event presenting, and one gentleman said to me, he goes, "Why should we care?" I'm like, because as long as transnational criminal organizations are using cryptocurrency, we have to care.
Right. That's like the folks at Blockbuster saying, streaming. Why should we care about streaming?
Everybody keeps asking me, "Oh, this will go away." I'm like, it's not going away.
Yeah.
It's not going away.
That's right.
And thank goodness that we have software engineers and mathematicians out there building better tools for lots of law enforcement can use.
Yeah. Well, listen, do you have any parting thoughts before we drop off? I mean, you've told them about the event. People know how they can get in touch with you. Are there any sort of special projects or special kinds of things that you guys would like to get involved in right now? Any sort of parting thoughts?
Right now, I don't have anything off the top of my head, but I do want to thank you again for inviting me to present or to be interviewed. I'm looking forward to next month's symposium.
It's going to be awesome, and hopefully we'll get you back to do a follow-up and see where the whole industry has gone in the next year or so. So that'll be awesome.
Absolutely, and I look forward to hearing about your thoughts as well.
All right, Lourdes, you have a great day, and we'll see you in September.
Thank you, Gerard.
We shine the spotlight on our community. Please take a few minutes and listen to one of our global members.
Hi, I'm Tom Goldstein. I'm a partner with Cogent Law Group based in Washington, D.C. We have been involved with GBA almost since the start. Gerard we've watched him grow this organization and truly make it worldwide, and it's been really, really amazing. We got involved because it's an opportunity to connect with a lot of really interesting people. We found some clients. We do a lot of work in the fintech space with a particular focus on cryptocurrencies and blockchains. One of the great benefits I see of GBA is the dissemination of ideas. I think there's an opportunity here. You've got governments at all levels, state, local, national, working on innovations. I mean, there's so many different use cases for blockchains. And I think the opportunity to see what the different pilot programs that different governments have used, and then using GBA as a clearinghouse to connect those, spread the word about programs that have worked in one place and to see if they can be replicated elsewhere. I think that's really, I see as one of the great potential achievements that GBA can make. And then also connecting individuals, spreading ideas, connecting people who have ideas with, say, others who have experience launching new businesses. So I come here for the people I meet and for the conversation.
The future of money governance and the law is brought to you by the Government Blockchain Association, or GBA. The podcast brings together leaders in the public and private sector to discuss how government and industry can work together. We talk about how to enhance the integrity of our institutions and the quality of life for the people they serve.